is the Pegasus Podcast, presented by Night Sports Now. UCF news, views, and a few hot takes. Now, here are your hosts, Bailey Go Knights Adams and Christian Charge On Simmons.
Welcome into episode 264. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCASimmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. You can also email us at PegasusPodcast@ksn@gmail.com. I wasn't going to do anything because we have a lot to get through, and I was just going to say, let's just start the podcast. But when you started the intro, you were not wearing a hat, and then the video came back and you were wearing a hat, and now it's thrown me off.
And what's funny is I did that and thought to myself, he's going to immediately make a comment about this too. I was planning to go hatless this podcast, and we're watching while the intro plays. We're just kind of sitting here, and I was looking at myself as you do, and I was like, this is not working for me. The hair situation is not working for me. So I very quickly grabbed a hat that was next to me, and here we are. So, and I thought, surely Bailey will just not say anything about the hat.
No, I had to. But yeah, a lot to get through, some football stuff, a lot of basketball stuff as well. We'll start with the spring portal opening and some movement there for UCF, more outgoings than additions so far. I can just mention the addition off the top. The Tennessee State offensive tackle Connor Meadows committed to UCF yesterday on Tuesday. And I think more of what we're going to talk about here is probably just one of the outgoings more than anything. The big one was last week after we recorded our podcast. Dylan Risk, the quarterback, obviously, of the last, 4 games of last season, hit the transfer portal, which took UCF's quarterback competition down to 3. So let's just pause there and let's just talk about the loss of Dylan Risk. And I kind of tweeted it when it happened. Was that kind of like I think in last season and how depressing and sad the whole thing was outside of RJ Harvey, his performance in the space game and what he did, especially with the Hail Mary at the end of the first half, that always will stand out to me about that season, in a season that has little else that stood out about it. So I appreciate him for that. Yeah.
And after the BYU game, when everyone was excited about him, I declared on this podcast that I think he's more of an FCS quarterback. And that comment, which I caught a lot of heat for, could potentially have the greatest comeback of all time in the coming weeks here. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Like I said, I think we've said repeatedly on this podcast, I think he was probably the option the fan base in general was rooting the most for. And as we've alluded to on this podcast repeatedly, we liked him a lot. We assumed going into spring it was going to be a Taven versus Risk battle, and spring started, and it took literally 2 practices to start hearing about how Risk looked maybe a step behind Taven and maybe a step behind all of them, and was probably going to end up being one of the lower half options in the room. Fancher was the big surprise. I think we all thought that Jakari wasn't going to be in it, but Jakari's kind of surprised too. And we went to the first open practice together on Friday, and we talked about on the podcast. He looked really bad, and I wanted to chalk that up to we're watching one practice. You can't take too much away from a single practice, but when you've been hearing what you've been hearing and then that happens, it kind of felt like the writing was on the wall. I think the surprise is I didn't think it would happen in spring. I kind of assumed that, especially since there hadn't been a ton of separation between the 4 quarterbacks, they'd be able to hold on to him for fall, but obviously that did not happen. Listen, if we as lowly podcasters are hearing where things are trending with that, he knows. So I think he just figured it was time to get out.
Yeah, and what you just said is kind of how I viewed the whole thing. Was we did come on the podcast last week and say he was 4th out of 4, and the one practice we saw, and then a few days later him hitting the portal was kind of evidence that maybe it wasn't just that one practice that he was 4 out of 4. And it is unfortunate in the fact that we've said on this podcast, I think a couple times, we would like to see him win the job, but it didn't seem like it was trending that way. And obviously, it didn't seem like it. And obviously it wasn't, because, he obviously saw the writing on the wall and decided to try to go find a spot where he can play.
He always seemed like a good guy. He seemed like a good ambassador for UCF. It's too bad. It's just one of those things where it's this is zero. I want to be clear, actually nothing that's happened in the portal so far for football is any kind of admonishment on the Frost administration or the way things are trending. It's just, and at the end of the day, it's not to revise history, because we've said what we said about Risk, but he had an incredible space game performance that we will remember for all time, because it extended the space streak in the year where it really felt like we've had 2 years back to back now where the space game streak was absolutely going to end, and it just didn't end due to heroics. But outside of that, he struggled the rest of the way. There was never another performance to back that one up. He ended up getting benched at one point during the Utah game. It just didn't. We wanted him to take the leap. He was young. Clearly that didn't happen, and that's fine. That's the sport these days. I think the more actionable takeaway from a UCF perspective is they probably need to go get a quarterback now. I don't think you're going to want to roll into the season with 3 scholarship quarterbacks. That's going to probably be, I don't want to say challenging, but most of the quarterbacks who hit the portal post spring are not guys who are like, they're guys who did not win the job at their respective, like they're Dylan Risks. It's more like that at more schools. And I don't know, you find out you're not going to win the job at one place. I don't know what the appeal is at UCF because I don't think they're going to be like, I think we're probably close to just being able to say, yeah, Taven's probably going to be the starter. So I don't know what the appeal is, but they do have to find a 4th one somehow. So we'll see who they end up with.
Yeah. And we talked about that, for weeks, I think, just kind of hoping you could get through the spring portal without any of the guys entering the portal. So that you could roll in and have 4 scholarship quarterbacks like that. But yeah, I think it will be a little tough to kind of sell like, hey, come in and you can't even, I don't know if you can really sell. I guess it depends on the quarterback, but you're not going to be able to really sell like, hey, join this race that's already been going on all throughout spring and maybe you'll have a chance. And it will be tough. If anything, they'll go out and get just a body like what we thought Fancher was, I guess, to be fair.
Yeah.
So who knows? But, I think replacing QB4 who looked like it was going to be QB4 most seasons, you'll feel like, yeah, you need another quarterback in the room. Most seasons you don't get to your 4th quarterback on the field. I know they did last year. But if that happens again this year,
did it last year with no injuries involved at any point in the process. It was an entirely voluntary, let's use 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah, that was insane, really. When you phrase it that way, it's just, should never happen.
That has to be the first time in the history of college football that's happened, right? There is no way another team started 4 different quarterbacks and injuries never played a role in their decision. There's no way.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. I mean, maybe it has happened, but watching it play out the way it did was just a disaster.
You have to really feel bad for Risk too, from the perspective of, so he started last year, he was the 4th string quarterback. And he worked his way all the way up to start multiple games, and then somehow by midway through spring ball the next year was back to being the 4th string quarterback. I mean, that is unfortunate. Yeah. And
it is.
If you care, I know this is a UCF podcast, not a Dylan Risk podcast. It was on 3 reported. It's Western Kentucky, Tulane, and FIU are the potential landing spots for him. Tulane, it's somehow in a 3-day span publicly going after both Nico Iamaleava and Dylan Risk is a wide spectrum of quarterback options, but FIU feels like the logical choice there, I would think. But,
back home. He was from South Florida, right?
Yeah.
That would make sense. And I think he could do really well. I think it could pan out for him.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I just think that he wasn't necessarily a power 4 quarterback.
Yeah.
Because I'm never wrong, and I was right in my original analysis of it.
I guess it really reflects poorly on Arizona's defense. I don't know.
No, it just reflects well on the space game magic. I think UCF could hire a local high school to dress their uniforms and play that game, and UCF could still win it.
I hope that doesn't age extremely poorly. Other portal entries for UCF. We don't have to spend too much time on them because we've got a lot more to get through. Center Walt Claire Flynn, cornerback Traquan Fegans, long snapper Aiden Fedigan, and defensive tackle Marcus Downs. I think the most notable name there is Flynn, even though I think he's probably only notable to people who follow recruiting very closely, because since he came to UCF as their highest rated recruit, or their highest rated offensive lineman recruit, we didn't hear about him again, really, from the coaches, from anybody. So yeah, I think that's more of a personally, I'm like, oh, that sucks. I wish he would have panned out, but it seemed pretty clear he wasn't in the plan, so he ended up hitting the portal.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it a little bit. We're going to talk about some updates from UCF's second open practice, which at this point was 90 years ago, but it's still a lot of interesting stuff. I went out to that one and covered it, and it was a lot of fun. But we talked with Sean Clark, the offensive line coach, for a prolonged amount of time about his philosophy for the offensive line, and Flynn not really coming up in any meaningful way over the course of that conversation was definitely kind of a sign. I mean, it's a couple things. It's unfortunate because we personally thought he was a big get, and that was very exciting to get someone of that caliber. And it's just unfortunate it didn't work out, but it's also just the latest indictment on the Gus Malzahn recruiting strategy, that this is another big time target who was going to be a huge deal and a hometown hero and a cornerstone, or not a hometown hero, but a cornerstone of all this stuff, and just didn't work out. And yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of surprised because I guess just because he was such a big name in recruiting, I've seen more than a couple fans react like this is some bad thing, that this is this is a loss. Just read the room, guys. He was not going to factor in this year, and he's going to try to go somewhere where he can, and that's fine. That's the name of the game. It's just what happens.
I think that's the case with every one of these entries. it seems that that's the case. I mean, I don't know anything about UCF's long snapper situation. I can't really speak on that, but Fegans was what, a third school guy?
They have a long snapper coming in the summer, in the summer window. Yeah.
Fegans was a third school guy, I believe, or maybe even fourth school. And then Marcus Downs tweeted when he entered the portal that he's open to even playing offensive tackle. So it wasn't one of those things where, he's just looking to play. He's looking to play somewhere. And all these
Marcus Downs' tweet was actually very nice. He said, "Big thanks to Coach Martin for believing in me. I know Coach Frost will get UCF back to its winning ways." Like this, guys, this is what the spring portal cycle is. It's not. I would be like, listen, UCF brought a new coaching staff, and there is always the risk that you take that there are guys who you need who are going to matter this season who don't vibe with the new coaching staff, and they decide to head out. We are very early, like the window just opened, but so far that's nothing. Like this is the dream portal window for UCF right now. You're only losing guys who weren't going to factor in anyway, and now you see if you can add a little bit. None of it, like this is not anything that you should be alarmed about or worried about.
Yeah. I think we can leave that there and kind of just transition into UCF's second open practice.
Can I say a little bit more really quickly?
Sure.
On that? Yeah. Sorry. We have so much to get through it. I'm like, hold on. Why don't we stay on the first topic a little bit longer? So the other thing to keep an eye on is UCF is going to be trying to add players in the coming days, and we'll see who they go after. We don't really know exactly what the targets are. It seems like quarterback will be on the list. They got to get a quarterback. Probably I'm interested because like the buzz is that they want another running back, which is a little surprising to me because Montgomery has looked good. As far as we know, Jaden Nixon's looked good. Stacey Gage, we talked about at the open practice we went to how good he looked. And then I went to the next one. He looked great again. Like Stacey Gage looks awesome. So I don't know. And then there's also Tavion Swint, who's been non-contact this spring, but is still someone who, as we've talked about, does not look like he just got to school. Looks like he's been in a weight program in college for years. So I don't totally know what that's about. Maybe it's just, we've talked about that Frost loves to go deep in the running backs room a lot more than Gus ever did. But yes, that'll probably be a target. We'll see. Just another thing to keep an eye on. I know they missed out on his name slipped my mind now. There was an App State lineman who we thought maybe the Sean Clark connection. He might come here, but he ended up going to Oklahoma State. I don't know if UCF totally missed on that or just decided they weren't interested in him, but not coming here.
Markel Samuel. I kind of thought just that was a natural connection with Clark, but I think they were initially rumored as like, I don't know if it was just they're a team to watch because Sean Clark's there or what.
No, I think he was coming in for a visit. So I think they probably did lose out on him, but can't win them all.
Yeah. So UCF second open practice, which you were at. Yes. I honestly, I've been busy and haven't really paid attention to any media surrounding it. So this is going to be a lot of your observations and me reacting to what happened with shocked faces. And
what are your questions? What do you want to know?
Anything. I do not like. How do the quarterbacks look? I guess we'll start there because we always start there.
Well, Dylan Risk looked great. Just kidding, wasn't there?
Mean.
I know. It was kind of funny because this stuff is so weird now. Like it's announced. I don't think he'd officially entered the portal yet. I think it just got announced that he was going to transfer. And I'm at the practice. I'm like, he's not going to be here, right? Like, surely
the next day he wasn't there.
Yeah, he's gone. But you're going to love to hear that once again, there wasn't a lot of separation between any of the three. It was honestly even less separation than we saw in the practice we went to, which is kind of fun. The big update, which I think has made its way to social media since, is we did watch Cam Fancher get hurt. It was just kind of one of those mistakes that happens. That's not really anybody's fault. It was just like I think they were running 11v11 at the time that it happened, and he was rolling out of the pocket, and there was a defender coming up on him, and he's obviously no contact, but he didn't see the defender there, and he went to throw the ball and basically just hammered his hand into the defender. Yeah. He looked like he was in a lot of pain for a while after that, and his hand was bandaged at practice that was open this week. So I don't think that's something that will be an impact for fall. I mean, whatever it is, he's got months to get over it. So, but it just sucks that he's lost a little bit of springtime here to that.
Yeah. Another quarterback question, I guess, if there was no separation, did Taven Jackson do anything that should make me feel excited about him being potentially QB1? Because based on what we saw at the first one, and I guess maybe it's only through that and just maybe some more practice clips I've seen on Twitter, I'm starting to lean more like, I hope Jakari can throw now because I think he's my favorite option.
I really wish I could come in and tell you Taven did something amazing. He didn't really. He was fine. I will say there wasn't no one threw a pick as far as I remember, unless I'm forgetting one. And this one was a little different for me because I was covering it. So I was like on the field for a lot of it. I was talking to people. So it was like not as, locked in with the binoculars as we were. But yeah, I don't believe anyone threw a pick. Yeah, I thought he looked. Fancher had probably the best throw of the day, I think, at one point before he got hurt. Which that's just what you want to hear is no one standing out. But I will say that I didn't see any of the really bad missed throws from Taven like we saw a couple of in the first. Jakari looked more down to earth than he did in the practice we watched. It is like a polite way to say it. I think that on the top, sort of transitioning from the quarterbacks to who they were throwing to, we went to the first practice and you came out of it where you were like, I'm hyped about the wide receivers. And I was like, that's great, Bailey. I thought they looked fine too, but it was one practice. Why don't you calm the hell down? And now that I've been in another practice, I'm just joining you on that because they once again looked
I thought this was going to be a victory lap from you.
No,
I was
scared. They once again looked far better than I was expecting. I'm gonna call my shot right now. Waden Charles and Carl Jenkins, they're going to be something this year. Waden looked great at the practice we were at, and Charles Jenkins was looking excellent this whole second practice. That's exciting because that was a room that we were so worried about. And on top of that, the bad news is it's on social media by now. Day Farmer suffered a pretty serious injury while we were out there. They were doing one-on-one tackle drills, and he just twisted his leg the wrong way. And it was obvious from the moment it happened. And he's since tweeted, he said, looking forward to 2026. So that's presumably some kind of season-ending injury, which is super unfortunate.
That news shattered me. For a guy that just transferred back in, I don't have much of a connection to him other than just being excited about what I'd seen from him, the little that I'd seen. I was like, that's some of the worst news possible from that practice. But Waden Charles is a big fan in Gabriel Davis, doesn't he? I have to call him Gabriel Davis.
Gabriel Davis. He was Gabriel Davis when he first got here, and then we sort of subtly switched to Gabe at some point around his sophomore season. Then he went to the NFL and became Gabriel Davis again. I don't really know what happened there, but I
don't know.
I always think about that with Magic. Go Magic, charge on, by the way. They won their play-in game, so they're on their way to being the 7 seed where they're going to beat the Boston Celtics. I always with Nikola Vucevic was the Magic's best player for a long time, and he was always on anytime he was referred to as Nick Vucevic, whether it was the announcer in the arena or just on TV. And then after 4 years, he just randomly became Nikola Vucevic. And the behind the scenes story was that he doesn't go by Nick and just didn't have the courage to tell anyone that until he
once he got good enough.
The best. I think it actually was the season he was named an all-star. He was by the way, I'd kind of like to stop being called Nick, which I get because I do not like being called Chris at all. And I don't believe anyone should ever call me that. So
does anyone ever call you that? As a joke?
No, not as a joke, but people constantly, every time I meet someone new in my life, it's right around the 2 to 3 week mark, they try to mix it up. And it's no. Let's not go down that road. My name is Christian. But anyway, yeah, Day got hurt, but the wide receivers looked really good other than that. That's good. What other questions do you have, Bailey? I'm just putting the spotlight on you.
Was guard Mimilar in the mix?
Yeah, figured that out. So he was hurt. That was his first practice back, was Saturday.
Okay.
So that was the issue there.
Okay. That's a good question. Easy answer. Let's see. I really did not write down any questions. I thought this was going to be you coming in with a list of things here's what I want to talk about and here's what I saw.
So that's totally what I was going to do. And before the podcast, Trace Trilko of Sons of UCF fame had suggested to me that we should do an interview style where Bailey just asks you questions. And I said, that's a good idea. Then we came up with all this stuff that we had to get through on this podcast. And I felt like we didn't have time for that. Then we started the segment and I was like, I should just throw this to Bailey anyway and see how he does. And so far,
I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm kind of enjoying it.
I'm playing the role of a coach if his goal was to actually give information in a press conference, is I feel like what I'm doing right now.
You've already talked about the running backs, so I know it was probably limited contact, but offensive line kind of looking the same as it did when we went as far as composition.
Worth monitoring that Rubel was once again at left tackle the entire practice. Okay. The offensive line they rolled with was Rubel at left tackle, Brooks at left guard, Miller at center, Smith at right guard, and Cushman at right tackle.
So Mimilar is being eased back because he's going to start, right?
I'm assuming that was an injury thing. I wouldn't be counting him out. I'm assuming he's going to start. Okay. We can talk a little bit about, since we're on the offensive line. That was who we spoke to. We spoke to Sean Clark and we spoke to several different offensive linemen. I really want to talk a lot about that because I thought it was very insightful for several different reasons. You're laughing.
No, I forgot about you. Teased this to me yesterday in a text, and I was like, you haven't said anything about this, and you're like, I know, I've been saving it, so now I'm excited.
It was interesting and enlightening, I think is how you could say it. But Sean Clark, it's kind of funny. I feel like most O-line coaches are just kind of the same mold. I was very much reminded of Herb Hand talking to him, just his. His demeanor and the way he views his guys. O-line units are always so tight. Is that the tightest unit on any football team? It always kind of feels like it is.
Yeah.
Which is always cool to see. Now, one of the big differences that I thought was interesting, and we'd kind of known but hadn't fully confirmed, is we talked about philosophy, and it is not the Herpan philosophy. They want to rotate. They want to go deep into that room. They want two centers who can get out there regularly in a game. They want to do the same thing with the guards. They want guys who are going to be rotating in and out, which I think is part of why there's so much excitement in that room, because I think guys who maybe didn't have an opportunity to play, because her hand liked it very set. It was, you find 5 guys, and those are your 5 guys, and that's who you roll with. And it sounds like that's not going to be the plan this year. So we're going to have to learn some new names there, because it's not just about who's going to be starting. It sounds like a lot of guys are going to get involved.
I don't like that.
Yeah. You were always a big advocate of hands sticking with the 5.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the weird thing about Hand was like, his was always, I'm going to pick the 5 most talented guys and figure out where they work. Like he was kind of almost positionless with the offensive line. It sounds like Clark is now going to be not positionless, but just like rotational. And that's just, I don't know. I feel like I've always heard and been told about offensive line play, like chemistry is a very big thing. And I guess if you're working at it this intently with mixing it up, and all these guys are working with these other guys in different combinations, maybe it can work. I don't think I've ever really heard that be a common thing. So it scares me.
I'm not overly worried about it, because I also think it's one of those things that it probably tightens up as you get into the season, right? Like, this is just a better opportunity to really learn who's performing the best, and there you go. We did ask him about why is Paul Rubelt now a left tackle, and he kind of just, he didn't give a super straight answer. He was like, well, we'll see where he goes. Maybe he's right tackle, maybe whatever. So that'll be an interesting.
You know what? Well, I don't know. This is maybe an obvious takeaway from that, but I think that means they're going to try to go get a left tackle in the portal. I don't know if Connor Meadows plays left tackle. I don't remember. I know he played every game at tackle for Tennessee State this past year, but I don't know. It just kind of feels like almost like they don't have a left tackle, and they're like, all right, well, let's see if Paul can do it. And if not, like, our goal, the ideal situation would be go out and get a left tackle and then move Paul Rubelt back to right. I don't know if you can just go out and get a starting left tackle in the spring portal, though.
The spring portal is really not. We have some news that we figured was coming, and I'm glad it happened while we were recording. We'll save it for the basketball section. Okay. If you're listening to this podcast tomorrow, I'm sure you already know what it is. I'm sure Bailey knows what it is. We'll get there when we get there. But anyway, I think you're right. So the issue of that, if they do want to go get a left tackle, because obviously they were going after the App State guy. They do want to beef up the offensive line. That's a tough spot to be in, because that is a position that, like, if you need help there, boy, do you need help there. That is a position group that can take your season. The spring window is not the ideal window to make that happen, particularly not this year. And I'm going to get into like the weeds on the way college football works for a second here, which I know some of you hate, but here we are anyway. There's a thing called the House settlement, which we've referenced regularly, which is what's going to make rev share a thing. Once that settlement is approved, the model switches to rev share, where there's a $20.5 million cap that every school has to adhere to for all of athletics, whatever. Since that settlement has not yet been approved and has not yet taken effect, what's going on in the December window, and what is once again happening in the spring window, is the rich teams in college football are front-loading deals that would be illegal by the time the settlement works. So say that you have a $20.5 million cap and you only want to spend $14 million on your football roster. That's the world we're moving into. But there's this offensive lineman that you've just got to have. You are a left tackle away from having the season of your dreams. So you want to give this guy $5 million to get him to come to your school. That's not realistic. You want to give this guy $2.5 million to come to this school. That's a huge chunk of your rev share budget that you probably wouldn't be able to do once the settlement is approved. So what you do, say the settlement's going to get approved in July, you have your collective sign him to a contract for $2.5 million. That's great. That's what you offered him. And $2.3 million of those $2.5 million are going to be paid to him before July. It's a front-loaded deal. It's all paid and it's in his pocket before the settlement takes effect. Then you switch that last $200K over to your rev share budget. So UCF, you will be shocked to know, is not really in a position to play that kind of game. But the schools that are driving up the prices for everybody right now. So this is a weird spring window where it's not a very deep window. And so far there aren't very many very good players in the portal, but they're all getting a ton of money because it's the last portal window before rev share hits. So it's not an ideal time for UCF to be shopping for a key position.
Yeah, I can't imagine a situation. The only thing I can think of is if they somehow get lucky and somebody who maybe left the Orlando area doesn't like where they are right now and feels like, all right, let me go back home. That probably is their only play there. But yeah, I don't know. It's not ideal. And I guess it's probably also not ideal that, like, not only is it going to be difficult to go out and get a starting left tackle in the spring portal, but the fact that they need to do that or feel like they need to do that is also a little worrying, because I think in an ideal scenario, you also don't want Paul Rubelt to play left tackle. I think he's probably better on the right side, but
I don't know. Maybe they were just like, hey, we have a guy who's 6'10". Why don't we just make him the left tackle? Could also have been what happened. But what I did want to talk about with the offensive lineman, though, I apologize. That was probably very loud. I just dropped my phone on the table.
I thought you did that on purpose.
No, I did not. I apologize. That probably did not sound great. I am so very sorry if I have startled you, dear listeners. We spoke with Keegan Smith, Cam Kinney, and Jabari Brooks after practice. The interviews were interesting. And they were interesting, just making sure my photo's not cracked. We are good. They were interesting because they were all asked questions along the line of, as you do after a coaching change, of what's different. What do you like more? What do you not like more? The responses were interesting about Frost versus Gus. And I know we've talked so much about bringing in the new culture and how they need a culture reset. And the candid nature that some of these guys talked about how things are different was interesting. Keegan Smith was asked about what's it like having Frost as a head coach and how this is different from the last era. He said the biggest difference is there's no walking on eggshells around Frost or his staff. Interesting comment. And he said that they're all really comfortable around him. It's a much more relaxed, welcoming vibe. Cam Kinney was asked a similar question and said that the biggest difference is that Frost is a player's coach and that he's enjoyed how there's more of a conversation and dialogue between the coaches and the players now. Jabari Brooks was asked a similar question and said that it's nice to have coaches who want to lift your spirit. Things are fun again. You make mistakes and it's not some huge deal. I thought hearing all those comments from 3 different players in quick succession was very interesting.
I love O-linemen. O-linemen are the best. They'll just say whatever they want.
It is the one position group that you really can get them to talk about anything. Like it really is great.
They're the best. Yeah, I mean, I can't say any of it surprises me for multiple reasons, I guess. Probably just because, one, we knew things got pretty bad, and we knew that was a 4-8 team, and I can imagine it wasn't very fun. And Gus's personality, I think, couldn't be any more different than what Frost's is. So that makes sense. And it is kind of funny and I guess nice to hear kind of echoing of like what we heard in 2016 was like football's fun again. Like we're having fun. And the fact that like it is a different staff, but like it's headed up by Frost. And I think that still matters to him, obviously. So the fact that they're already kind of getting these guys back to where the culture is better is good. The only thing I can really like, the only thing I want to stop myself from like buying into too much about these comments is the fact that like I would kind of expect some kind of comments like that from the guys who didn't follow Herb Hand and Gus Malzahn to.
Sure. Now that being said, multiple had really good things to say about Herb. I forget which one. One of them even clarified his comments. It was like, to be clear, like loved Herb Hand.
Which that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of those guys probably loved playing for Herb Hand, and then to stay playing for Herb Hand, they had to kind of just deal with Gus Malzahn.
Yeah, and I do want to be, because this is what happens when a coaching change happens. Things are always better. We just had a bad time. Now we have a new coach. Things are going to be great again. But it really was like their faces like lit up when they were asked about Frost and this staff. And the other comment that I saved for last because I thought it was the most directly correlated to how people felt about Gus's player management was Keegan Smith also said that another big difference is he said last year it felt like they kind of had their guys. I'm paraphrasing. And now it feels more like everyone's getting an opportunity. And that, I think, is the number one complaint everyone had in the Gus era, that we were, which it became less of a conspiracy and more just open facts, that it didn't feel like who was going to get the opportunities was decided before anyone had hit the practice field, which I think you can attribute some of that to, I think the NIL era was very new to everybody. And I don't think Gus was particularly adept at managing it. But, you know, that's what big thing we've said for Frost is the big thing is just play the best players. Leave the politics out of it, whatever. And I know it's always not that cut and dry. I know politics do play a role, but it sounds like that's kind of where things have been at this spring. And yeah, it's going to cost you. It sends Dylan Risch to the portal, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I like it. I think it's interesting to kind of hear that from multiple guys like on the same, like, not, obviously I don't think they like coordinated, let's say this stuff before we go talk to the media. Like I think that's just the honesty that you got. And I like that. I did real quick kind of want to flip over to the defensive side because we do have the basketball topic to get to, but we haven't talked defense at all. No interceptions, you said, but anything stand out, I guess, maybe let's from a secondary standpoint at first?
Yeah, the defense had a pretty solid day. It wasn't super different from what we saw in the first practice. They still seem a step ahead of the offense, which I think is probably fine for where things are at. There weren't necessarily like any like I feel like the big plays kind of belonged to the offense that day, which was a little different than where we were at. I did find one moment kind of interesting. Dylan Wade, tight end, had, I forget exactly what the moment was. It was some kind of big catch, big play, and it was right in Jair Brown's face. And Dylan Wade was talking, like got in his face and would not shut up, like following him around the field, just talking, and would not let it go. And then Dylan Wade finally leaves. I think he actually came back at one point, did it again, and then he left. And he goes and like starts to celebrate the offensive guys. And I watch Frost goes up and just puts his arm around Jair and kind of like talks to him and like comforts him for a little bit, and, like pats him on the back. And I'm just like, I don't know, that was a nice moment that I kind of liked seeing. Like it just seems like which I found funny. He comforts him, made no effort to stop Dylan Wade from talking all the trash. Like they kind of let that happen and we're like, we'll clean it up after. But I don't know, it's just kind of watching a culture develop like that is kind of, it just seemed fun. Like everyone was just kind of having fun, you know? I
kind of like the idea that what Frost might have said to him was like, way to not throw hands at him. Like, because that'll happen in games. Players will talk trash, and they'll throw a flag on you if you react. They don't often throw a flag, or they don't always throw a flag on the guy who's in your face. So maybe that was like a little moment where he was just like,
let me be fully clear about Dylan Wade. Like, I'm not like, he would have probably been like ejected. Like it just like, it's not like, oh, it was like, it went on and on and on. Like it was a whole thing, but I don't know. I kind of like the idea of Frost like walks up to Jair Brown and puts his arm around his shoulders and just goes, "You're hitting the portal." No, it was, you know, it was fun. It looked like everyone was having fun the whole practice, which is cool to see. I just didn't have any super big notes on the defense. It was not that different from what we saw the first time around. Can we very quickly, before we move on, talk about special teams?
Let's do it. I was actually going to ask about that next.
Special teams, bad. Not Dylan Risk. He's the quarterback who's not here. Grant Reddick. I don't know where I was going in my brain, where I landed on Dylan Risk to say Grant Reddick. Towards the end of practice, they did the usual, all right, let's line up and practice some field goals. Reddick missed the first 3. He bounced back a little bit and hit a couple, and then he missed some more. I think I'm ready to elevate it to it's a problem. It did not look good. We also know UCF is going to be in the market for a punter because McCarthy left and they did not replace him. I don't even know his name. Whatever not good enough to play punter they have on this team, he looked good when we watched him at the open practice we went to. He looked good again on Saturday. I really don't know what he's done where it can't just be him. He had it, like literally, it was good. It was good punting. So I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, the kicking thing scares me. It's so like, it's really annoying actually how we've gotten to this point. Because like thinking back, and obviously it was the greatest era, but like they went from Matthew Wright, who was really, really good, to Dylan Barnes, who was a solid follow-up.
Completely underrated just because he came after Matt Wright.
And then we had the years of Obarski. Then we had a little bit of good from Boomer, but also when you really look at his whole career here, not actually very good.
Yeah.
And then now we're at this point with Reddick where it's April 16th and we're like, hopefully he's not the guy when it's 4 months from right now.
And keep in mind, both Boomer and Reddick, highly rated recruits who were considered significant additions for UCF. It just kind of works that way sometimes. So yeah, we knew special teams was going to be a point of emphasis in the portal. I think it needs to be a very significant point of emphasis.
Go out and give a lot of money to a kicker.
Baylor just had a kicker into the portal. Interesting. Okay. Perhaps worth monitoring. We will see.
Let's monitor it. Let's do it. Let's personally make sure we're monitoring it.
We all throw the word monitor around a lot. For some reason, I said that my brain immediately went to a monitor lizard, which is not where I was going with this at all. But I don't really know when I tell you I'm monitoring something, I don't really know. Like, does that mean I'm just like staring at their Twitter and refreshing? I don't know.
Noticing. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm monitoring it closely with every second of every day.
Speaking of monitoring, there was a lot to monitor with this whole roster reset for UCF men's basketball.
Yes.
I honestly, like when I look at our outline for this podcast, it's like a giant block of text. I don't know where to start, especially given, let's start with the news that just broke during this recording of the podcast, because it'll all kind of put everything else into context. And we saw some writing on the wall when they went out and got a 7'2" center. Mustafa Cham is entering the portal, UCF's current, or I guess now former 7'2" center. I'm sad. I'm really sad.
I don't want to shame anybody. I really don't want to shame anybody. I don't. But listen, when UCF has a very good, who the assumption is this player is going to receive a lot of offers to go elsewhere, and UCF then goes to the portal and adds a largely identical player in skill set and size and where they will play, and UCF Twitter's like, hell yeah, we got two of them. I don't know, guys. Like, I just, at some point, like, you gotta see the writing on the wall. I mean, you gotta see the writing on the wall.
I don't remember what it was. I was not paying close attention. I was busy, and you texted me the news that they had landed a 7'2" center, and so all I thought to reply was just like, nice, like, cool. I think I was kind of just acknowledging that I saw it. You go, is it nice? And I was like, what is he getting? Like, I was like, yeah, he seems like he's good. And then you were like, is it good that they already have a player at 7 foot? And I was like, oh wait, that's horrible. Yeah,
I was being kind of mean, but I just felt like I was living in bizarro.
What day was that? I don't remember what I was doing, but
2 days ago, maybe.
Okay, I was busy and occupied, so I was just like, oh yeah, like, I'll just acknowledge that I got the text.
I don't know. They landed him, and I was like, oh god. And then everyone started celebrating, and I was like, guys, I'm not sure that this is like.
I wasn't even celebrating. I was just kind of like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know anything about this guy. Whatever.
What we know about him now is he is Mustafa Cham's replacement. It sucks. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, it obviously really, really sucks to lose Cham. I was hopeful they'd be able to hold on to him. This is the reality of the UCF men's basketball situation. Is there are teams that are spending just oodles upon oodles of money on basketball, and UCF is not. And honestly, like, it's evolved to the point this offseason where, like, we talk about the resource issue a lot. This isn't even a thing of like, well, they got to take money from football. The way basketball spending has escalated in the last few months is like Texas Tech had a player who was going to go in the first round of the NBA draft, and they are giving him so much money that he has decided to not go to the NBA. That is unheard of. Like, and that's a team in UCF's conference. Like, I just don't. It's unfortunate, and I get it for fans who are just frustrated by this because listen, I understand if you're a casual fan, it is not fun to have to learn an entire new roster every year. There's no continuity anymore. Every time you have a player who has a good season, if they have a year of eligibility left, they're probably going to be elsewhere. But like, for UCF, that is just the name of the game right now. And honestly, and we can maybe get into more positives here, they have done a way better job building a new roster early on in the portal than I was anticipating. They have had some really solid gets, guys who probably could have gone to better programs. And they're building better than I would have thought. Yeah, I get it sucks to have to redo it every year and lose your best players, but like, this isn't the worst case scenario we're living in right now.
Yeah, it's gotten to a point where it's like, what's even the point of learning like the new team? Because it's just like, let's just get to the fall and I'll enjoy watching UCF basketball as an entity. And
there's certainly no point in projecting out. Like, there is nothing to be gained from discussing the 2026-2027 season right now.
Yeah. So should I get the rest of the departures out of the way first? And then
we can do departures.
Let's
and then
do
we'll
that.
go into additions.
We knew a lot of these guys were already entering the portal or had already entered the portal, but I just compiled them all together here just as a refresher. And we know some of them had landing spots now, so I guess that's new news. But Niels Machowski is now going to Wofford. We knew he had hit the portal. He announced he was hitting the portal before the crown even started, I think. Obviously, Jalen Sellers as well. He's going to Providence. Tyler Hendricks, I think just today, announced he's going to Utah Valley. Mikey Williams is still out there. Rokas Josias is still out there. Cameron Simpson is without a destination as of right now. Keyshawn Hall going to Auburn, which we already knew about. J.J. Taylor, Dior Johnson, and then the new one was Jordan Ivy Curry, who had previously announced that he was coming back and then announced that he was hitting the portal. And then Brandon Helwig of, obviously, Rivals, everybody knows Brandon Helwig, pointed out that he might not have eligibility left. So the whole thing is confusing to me.
Yeah, the Jordan Ivy Curry one is a weird situation. And I admittedly was kind of roped into it too, that when he hit the portal, I was like, oh man, he had said he was coming back. That's a huge loss. But yeah, same thing as Brandon. A source told me too that he doesn't currently have a waiver to play next season. And he's played 5 seasons. Would he? So that's the part I don't understand and that I'm confused on, is that I went and looked at his game log, his history. I don't understand what the justification would be to receiving another year. So that's not so much losing to the portal. Like, I don't believe he's going to be on a roster next year. I don't fully understand. I know that it's easy to we could really, if we were just trying to like narrative farm, we could make a doomsday podcast about UCF loses Cham and Jordan Ivy Curry in 1 week. But like Ivy Curry, I don't know why he's convinced he's going to play another year. It doesn't sound like that's the way that things are going to go for him. But as far as the other departures, Jalen Sellers is still the one that hurts me the most. That's really unfortunate, especially since he didn't play really much at all this season. Machowski and Hendricks, look at where they ended up. I think you know who made the decision on that one. You know, wink, wink, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at in the departures. this is it, guys. They're going to have to do this every year.
And it's not like this is a shock. Like, we've talked about this. And when we were talking about how like kind of the season got flipped on its head by that streak at one point, and we were just talking about the reality of UCF basketball, I think I even said something along the lines of Dawkins put together a team we thought was going to go, or had potential to go to the tournament. Obviously that didn't happen. And you just have to start over and try to do it again next year. It is a roll of the dice every single year. I think I said those words. So that's what's happening. Yeah. And like you said, and we'll get to it now, the guys they're bringing in, again, look like a good group that we'll see how they mesh together and all that. But they've gotten some pretty impressive additions so far throughout this portal cycle. And it's, guys committing multiple in a day at points. Like, it's all happened very fast. But the one we knew about was Riley Kugel, 9.3 points per game last year at Mississippi State, a local kid. I think the rest of these all have happened since our last podcast. Jordan Burks, who averaged 5.7 points per game at Georgetown. George Beal Jr. had 12.8 points per game last year at Hampton, a Division II school. Damus Fulks from Milwaukee, 14.6 points per game, 5.9 assists per game, was second team All-Horizon League. The guy that we just mentioned, John Bull, who is the 7'2" center from Ole Miss, was a former McDonald's All-American. Obviously, now we know for sure that he will be Mustafa Cham's replacement. Jermichael Stillwell, another Milwaukee player, averaged a double-double last year and was a first-team All-Horizon League player at Milwaukee, obviously a teammate with Fulks. I had kind of forgotten just because it was so long ago, but UCF played Milwaukee this year.
And almost lost. It was a stressful game.
Yeah, and I like the idea, like Dawkins was like, let me just take a note of that. And when I have to start a new roster next year.
This is what's important to remember if you're a fan who's upset about the state of UCF men's basketball, is they're not at the bottom of the barrel. They're at the middle. So, yeah, they're going to lose guys to the top. Then they're just going to look down and go, hey, that Milwaukee team we played almost beat us. They must have had some good guys. What if they played us instead? So, sucks for Milwaukee. But those are – I'm really – you listed them all out. This is looking like a legit Big 12 team, which is shocking that they're somehow apparently – which we don't know. They could show up and be terrible. And they still have some work to do. But 3 years running, they're apparently going to somehow be able to assemble a real Big 12 roster despite being pretty out-resourced by most of their competition.
So just looking at that game, UCF beat Milwaukee by 8, and the two players they now brought into their roster, Stillwell had 14 points and 12 rebounds, played 32 minutes in that game, and then Fulks played 34 minutes in that game, 13 points, 6 assists. So, yeah, I think Dawkins saw that and looked back and was like, I think I like those two guys. So, yeah, no, I'm excited about it, and I think Kugel's an exciting ad. I think most of these guys – all have some exciting things about them, and we'll see. We'll see how it's one of those things that's weird. All this is happening now and it's April, and we're like, we won't remember all of this probably come October when the season's about to start in a couple weeks, but it'll be a nice little refresher when we do get there. Like, oh yeah, they do have a pretty good team they put together.
Just really quickly, just to go back negative, dropping the information as it comes in. Matt Rochelle's reporting that first off to the portal with a do not contact tag, which means he knows where he's going. Matt Rochelle is reporting that he already has a multi-million-dollar offer from another Big 12 school. I think that y'all are going to love the school, but we'll see. I could be wrong about that.
Whatever. I'm mad and I hate it and everything sucks.
But this is what I'm talking about because I'm already going to head off before anyone drops that this is why Dawkins must be fired. What the hell are you supposed to do about that if you're UCF?
You can't do anything.
What are you supposed to do when a conference school comes in and just drops a multi-million? Like I said, think about this. $20.5 million rev share cap. Schools aren't going to be able to afford like that. He is probably getting more than UCF is going to be able to spend on their roster next year. More than a lot of Power 4 schools are going to be able to spend on their roster because all these schools are they're taking advantage of the cap rules right now. I mean, I don't know I really don't. This isn't even like a yell at Mahajer to give more resources to basketball. This is just a straight up, some teams are messing with the rules to do what's best for them. And there's nothing really you can do about it.
And they're just in better position to mess with the rules than UCF is. Like, that is not,
I do think it's frustrating when it's a Big 12 school because I think that this is a really precarious time for the Big 12 and the ACC. We've talked about extensively how the SEC and Big 10 are trying to pull away and move towards becoming their own thing. And will the Big 12 and ACC still be considered power conferences in 10 years? Will they even have access to the playoff? And it's like, don't eat your own young, like, what do you, it's like, I don't know. I don't know. It's frustrating to see, but The anger is boiling in me as we continue to talk about it. But
Yeah.
it's super unfortunate. And there's not anything if you're UCF you can do about that.
I don't like it. Yeah. I don't know. I've been distracted for the last 2 minutes now ever since you said it's a Big 12 team and you don't think people are going to like, or you're going to love who it was. So I'm trying to see what you were hinting at there. And what I've first gathered is anger, in case it is who I think you're referring to and who it might be. So by this time tomorrow, everybody might know, but I don't know who it is. So
may even be somewhere we've gone on vacation to watch UCF play a football game.
Okay. Yeah. How? All right. Never mind. I don't know. Whatever. I was just going to get in more into that, but I don't need to.
I feel comfortable. It's in the dungeon now. So credit Brandon Hellig on that. There's some other money. There's some other pretty wild stuff in this report from Brandon that I think we might just need to save for the next pod so I can digest it.
Okay. All right. Well, then I guess whatever. Now we were just talking about how exciting and nice all these additions are, and then you had to bring it back to the negative. And I can't even go back to the positive right now. So maybe we just move on and start.
This is crazy. We have the whole paywall rule that I won't talk about things on the podcast that they're paywall because that's the point of a paywall. I don't want to mess anyone's business. This is insane. I'm sure this will be on social media very soon. Sorry. This is I don't want to do this type of podcasting where this paywall. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want that's a big scoop for Brandon. Good
football news.
All right, football news.
Football news. Good news. Scott and Ashley Frost committed $500,000 to UCF's Competitive Success Fund. So thank you to the Frosts. We love that news. Nothing really else other than the portal stuff we already talked about with football. Moving on to the mock draft roundup. The draft is next week. It's actually, by the time you're listening to this, a week away. So back to the roundups again. Some positive developments that I teased to you via text earlier. Last week, we talked about RJ Harvey. I'm looking at all this is from the mock draft database. It's a really good tool to use. RJ Harvey last week was consensus projected as a 5th rounder. This week, he is projected 4th rounder. So moving up a little bit. He's now 111th overall on the consensus board, which I think is a pretty big jump from where he was last week. Most mocks still have him in that 3rd to 5th round range, but the earlier he can go, obviously, the better for him and the more exciting it'll be for us. On the downside, BJ Adams, still projected as an undrafted free agent. He has dropped on the overall consensus board to 293, which is pretty far outside the range you want to be in. Still kind of 6th and 7th round range in the different mocks. Probably going to be an undrafted free agent by the looks of it. Mac McWilliams, though, back to more positive news. We're kind of ping-ponging back and forth here. Mac McWilliams went from a projected undrafted free agent to a projected 7th rounder. He's now up to 200th overall on the consensus. Or no, that's Kobe Hudson. He's 223rd on the consensus board. And then I just said it, Kobe Hudson up to 200th overall on the consensus board, projected as a 7th rounder. So UCF can get 3 draft picks. I'm all for it. So I got to move on now. Game of the week, UCF softball, 25-18-1. They're 6-9 in the Big 12, 8th overall in the conference. They are hosting number 21 Oklahoma State this weekend, who is 25-14, 6-7 in the Big 12. They're 7th, so just ahead of UCF in the current standings. They play Thursday at 6, Friday at 7, and Saturday at noon. Christian hasn't heard any of this. Tweet of the week.
What? Tweet of the week. Sorry. Tweet of the week this week. I think we're going to do a quick pivot and just send it to I don't even know what. I'm sorry. I'm baffled. I'm sorry. This is horrible podcasting. I had a tweet of the week too, and now I'm just, you know what? Just tweet of the week goes to you guys. Just thanks for being you.
Great.
I think my original tweet of the week was going to be to the chunk of the fan base that saw where guys like Hendricks and Mahowski ended up and were like, how could this have happened? How did we lose guys to schools like this? But honestly, that feels so light by Chum and all that. So that I'll make up for it with a better tweet of the week last week. Eric kind of got taken out of my sales on that one.
Yeah. I feel like this podcast there got taken out of sales at the 44-minute mark.
Yeah, you just spoke for a while. That's cool about the mock draft, though. I was listening to that part.
Oh, good. Okay, I didn't know if you'd even heard. I was excited for you to hear that, and then I was like, Christian is just not even looking at the screen right now.
I know. I was trying to get a tweet up. I was being a very poor podcast for the last few minutes. You know what's cool, though, is we had a jam-packed podcast where we had a ton to get through, and we got it done in 50 minutes. And I think that is a testament to us. And that was with breaking news during the podcast.
Yeah, No, I think that's great. That's fantastic. And it's nice. We can get out of here a little early. I'm not going to do this stupid thing. I hate, when you do this at your job where it's like you get like 2 minutes, you get done 2 minutes before you were supposed to. Like, we're going to give you 2 minutes of your day back. I never like when they say that. But
I'm not a fan of that at all. They do that in my job. There's something in the corporate world where that's just a thing people say. Really, really quickly. I just realized that we hinted at the school, and then I was like, we went on vacation there. I just realized, did we say the name? Like, I don't think everyone knows where we've gone on trips.
If you listen to the podcast, we've mentioned it. But
I'll just say it's Cincinnati. So that's cool.
I hate
because UCF and Cincinnati fans typically have a strong relationship. So this shouldn't impact that in any way.
We got called a slur by one of them in Cincinnati.
We did. Just a curse word. I don't think slur is the right term for that. But anyway.
I don't remember what it was now.
Okay, well, on that note.
All right. We'll get out of here. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week with episode 265. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCA Simmons, and at Night Sports Now. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.